So Chris from Mr. Beast decided he was going to come out as trans. That's an interesting thing to happen to someone as huge and as popular as Mr. Beast. So Matt Walsh gave his 2 cents on this, and we're damn curious to hear what he has to say. So let's do this.
We live in a segregated culture, and I don't mean segregated racially, though the left is certainly working on that. I mean that it's segregated generationally. The younger generations have their own culture, their own language, their own art, their own music, their own universe to themselves, which exists almost entirely online. It shouldn't be like this, and it wasn't always like this, but in the internet age, this cultural bifurcation of young and old is only getting worse. And kids have their own celebrities, too. These are people who gain tens of millions of fans, even hundreds of millions of fans, young fans, and become household names for younger people. So they're household names among the children in the household, but not the adults, while remaining almost entirely anonymous to anyone over the age of, say, 30 or 25. A prime example of this is YouTube star Mr. Beast. And the YouTuber known as Mr. Beast, real name Jimmy Donaldson, has 145 million subscribers on the platform. That's just for his primary channel. Donaldson also has several offshoot channels, each boasting millions of additional subscribers. On his main channel, Donaldson has 3 times as many subscribers as Taylor Swift, twice as many as Justin Bieber. In fact, he has more subscribers than every pop star, more than every internet personality, more than every media or entertainment company, aside from Sony's media division.
Mr. Beast.
That one hasn't beat, but other than that, he has the most. He is massively successful, wildly famous. And yet I hadn't heard of him until a few months ago.
That's kind of how
I
we
spend
were.
much of my day online for my job, unfortunately. I also have a YouTube channel of my own, which feels suddenly quite obscure by comparison. But I've only just recently become vaguely familiar with Mr. Beast. And even now, I wouldn't recognize the guy if he passed me on the sidewalk. It is, to say the least, very troubling that someone can become this prominent among younger generations and have this much influence over them, and yet be so obscure to the rest of us. If you're a parent and you've made the mistake of giving your child open access to the internet, you're placing an enormous amount of faith in these influencers who are influencing your kids. It is a faith that is almost always, or really always, misplaced. Because even the most family-friendly content, the most seemingly innocuous, as most of Mr. Beast's content appears to be, can subtly, or not so subtly, introduce concepts that will take your child down a very dark path.
Yeah, we just discovered Mr. Beast not that long ago. And honestly, I'm a fan. He's a good guy. He does things for other people. Very smart.
A genius. He's so smart.
I don't really know Chris that well. I know he's got these guys that hang around him. I think Chandler was like his best friend and the one that helped him start the channel. So I'm not sure where Chris came into all this. I don't really know Chris that well, but let's see what Matt knows about him.
In the case of Mr. Beast, that path has been opened by his sidekick and co-star on his videos named Chris Tyson. Tyson's a frequent collaborator with Mr. Beast and an internet celebrity in his own right with nearly 14 million subscribers across TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram.
I did not know that.
And he appears in many of Mr. Beast's videos. It's very familiar to fans of the channel. And those fans, most of them kids again, have been watching over the last few months as Tyson has transformed himself from a married man with a child to something that is supposed to look like some sort of approximation of a woman. Fans had noticed for several weeks as Tyson underwent a sort of bizarre physical change, not only growing his hair out, but beginning to appear increasingly frail and sickly and started wearing women's clothes and all the rest of it. Finally, last week, Tyson came out as trans and confirmed that he's been on hormone replacement therapy for the past 2 months.
That's news to me. I've watched several Mr. Beast videos and I haven't really noticed. So it's news to me that he's been transitioning. So has this been in his videos? I mean, can you tell that this Chris guy is, besides him coming out and saying he's changing, when I watch Mr. Beast videos, I never noticed this sort of thing. But Matt's on point. This is mainly kids that watch Mr. Beast. And I've always been okay with Mr. Beast. our son, he's 11. I'd be totally fine with him watching Mr. Beast because he does a lot of good things for people.
Yeah.
He gives away a lot of money. I mean, I know he makes a ton off his videos, but he puts it right back into his videos. Seen several interviews with him. Fascinating guy. I wonder how this is going to affect what happens to his channel from here on out, because cancel culture is a big thing and started on the left. Now the right's doing the same thing. So it's like everybody's canceling everybody at this point. And I would hate to see Jimmy lose his, following, because he does so much good with the money he makes from his videos.
Explaining his decision, Tyson tweeted, quote, "Informed consent HRT saved my and many others' lives. The hurdles GNC, gender nonconforming people, have to jump through to get life-saving gender-affirming healthcare in a first world country is wild to me. Just let people make informed decisions about their own bodies." In response to the concerns some people have raised about the effect his transition, quote unquote, might have on his young son, Tucker, Tyson said, quote, "I know I'm going to be a great parent, and so is every other person who puts the love of their child before everything. I made this decision because I wanted to show up as my best and happiest self for him. In a way, this was for Tucker."
No, it wasn't.
That's sticky.
That wasn't for Tucker. That was for you, Chris.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. No matter what side you fall on, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, it will have a huge impact on his son. Mm-hmm. He's got to explain this type of thing to his friends. He's got to wrestle with the emotions to figure out what exactly is going on. I mean, the real question is, if he's married and has a kid, how does this affect his wife? I turned this guy gay, or is he gay?
Yeah,
or...
what kind of mental trauma is his wife going through right now?
Right. I mean, that just seems odd to me. But I hate when people do things like this and say, I did it for somebody else. No, you didn't. You don't. You do this for yourself. And when it comes to the transing and all of that sort of thing, it is a very narcissistic thing. You're doing it for you. Period. You're not doing it for other people. Other people love you regardless.
Yeah.
You're doing it for you. So let's not start telling people that, hey, I think that for me to be happy and be my best self, I'm doing it for you. Bullshit.
I mean, you take someone with the following that they have, the 14, what was it that he had, 14 million subscribers and followers.
Never heard of it.
People love you, dude.
Right.
It's why are you changing yourself? It's not for you.
Well, it is for you.
I mean, it is for you. It's not for them.
Right. You're not doing that for your followers. You're doing it for yourself. And the one thing I have learned over time, because being my age, I've watched it go from gay and lesbian to bisexual to...
It's one extreme to the next.
Right. We just want to be left alone. We just want to be able to get married, so on and so forth, all the way to the point now where it's almost 100% pedophilia.
Yeah.
It has gotten to where everything is a sexual fetish when it comes to this. When the LGBTQ activists come out and say, we denounce pedophilia, I'll feel a little different. But I've yet to find one that will denounce pedophilia. And that's a problem as someone that has an 11-year-old and a 4-year-old.
Yep.
Because I denounce pedophilia. Pedophilia occurs in my presence. It will be handled quickly and swiftly. And the result may not be something people want to hear about.
Yep.
Now, we'll return in a moment to the grotesque and laughable claim that he's destroying his body and denying his own manhood for the sake of his son. For the sake of his son, he says he's doing it. But first, we have Mr. Beast's own reaction to all of this. Yesterday, he sent out a tweet blasting those who've raised concerns about having a transitioning, quote-unquote, man appear constantly in videos meant for kids. He called it absurd and said that, called the concerns absurd, that is, and said that all this transphobia is starting to piss me off.
Well, there it went.
Transphobia. A phobia is a fear. This word has just been bastardized over time.
Especially over the last couple of years.
All the phobias are absolutely bastardized. The word phobia means a fear. If you have arachnophobia, You have a fear of spiders. You're scared of them. They send chills down your spine that you just can't contain. That's a phobia. This isn't a phobia. This is a disagreement.
Yeah.
I disagree is how it should be put. It's not a phobia. And I'm sick of hearing the word phobia involved when it comes to trans or homosexual. They're not phobias.
No.
I have friends that are gay. I am not afraid of those friends. I may disagree with their lifestyle.
But that doesn't mean that we don't love them.
Right. And I'm not afraid of them. It just means I disagree with a choice that you made. It doesn't make me a bad person, and it doesn't make you a bad person. It is your choice, and as an adult, you are free to make whatever choice you want as long as it doesn't affect me or anyone else in an adverse way. I have no problem with it. But it's adverse when you make a decision and then blast a label on me and other people to make us appear as if we are bad people because we disagree
with your decision.
Correct.
Now, admittedly, Mr. Beast has been put in an extremely difficult situation because he built a multi-million-dollar empire with innocuous, family-friendly content targeted at kids, and now his friend and collaborator and sidekick has decided to turn these videos into a sort of visual journal of his gender transition. So Mr. Beast has a choice. He can either kick Tyson off of the team and then be excoriated as a transphobe, or he can come out fully in favor of transgenderism and he can stay, therefore, in the graces of the good graces of the media and LGBT activists, even if it means alienating a huge portion of his fan base, and especially the parents of his fan base.
Yep.
That's what I was about to say. Was it isn't even so much his fan base at this point because many of his fans
Our kids.
are young. And as a parent, if I saw Chris in these videos acting all foofy and being silly and telling people that it's okay to go whack your nuts off, my child's not going to watch that.
Nope.
It is not the job of influencers to raise my child and tell them what is and is not right.
Right.
I'll cut that shit off so fast it'll make your head spin. So Jimmy has a big choice to make, and it is not an easy choice.
Nope.
And for Chris to put Jimmy in this position,
It's real crappy of him.
very. Now he could have said, hey Jimmy, I'm going through some things. Again, I don't know what's going on with him and his wife, if they're getting divorced, how they're breaking this to their child, how old the child even is. I don't know these things. But regardless, I would say, look, Jimmy, I need to step away for a little bit because I've got some stuff going on. Make any excuse you want that I've got other obligations, whatever the case may be. And after an allotted amount of time, I'll be back. But I didn't know he had 14 million subscribers. So people are going to know what's going on with this guy.
Right.
And when Mr. Beast does bring him back, if he chooses to go that route...
Which, by the looks of it, he's not taking that route.
Right, it looks like he's just going to continue to have him in his videos. He did it for his son. But he didn't take into consideration his employer,
Right.
who is his friend, and puts his friend in a position to defend him, which then creates a line in the sand that he has drawn, which will hurt regardless of the direction.
Regardless.
Whether he says I am pro-trans, which is what he seems to be going with, or whether he says, look, he's my friend, I love him, and I'm going to support him regardless, which is what he should have said, and stay out of the whole transphobe ridiculous discussion. All he would have had to say is, Chris is my friend, I love him, I support him, and I hope you guys are understanding with our content, but we're going to keep doing the same content we've always done. We are not deviating, we are not changing message, we're not shifting anything. That's what Jimmy should have done.
Yep.
Well, unsurprisingly, he chose the latter. And now that he's gone down this road, there's really no coming back. You can expect much more pro-trans content from Mr. Beast going forward, which means that if you're a parent and you allow your child to watch Mr. Beast videos, now is a very good time to stop allowing that. We could probably assume that Mr. Beast would prefer not to have to deal with this, but Tyson has forced him to make a choice, and he chose. And he chose wrong. This is really the common thread. Tyson is forcing this onto people who are close to him, forcing it in more ways than one. A few months ago, Tyson posted a photo of his young son in high heels with the caption, quote, "Tucker chose to slay this morning." It's only a matter of time, we can assume, before we start hearing about Tucker's own, quote-unquote, gender transition journey, a journey which Tyson will claim that Tucker chose for himself, but we can clearly see who is making the choices here. As for his wife, Katie, we can surmise how she feels about all this based on the fact that she is divorcing her husband.
There's the confirmation.
There's the answer. So his choice that he chose for other people because it would make him happier, and he's doing this because he wants to be his best self for other people, has created a divorce, has put his child in high heels. So this poor kid doesn't have a chance. He's going to be confused as hell as to what's going on, and the bitterness that his wife is going to have, whether you consider it valid or not, is going to put a separation between Chris and Mommy.
Yep.
Oh, I hate to see this. I do hate to see this.
It's almost depressing, you know?
It is. I hate to see society go the direction that it's gone, but it has gotten to the point where this sort of thing is becoming common. And it's like people, influencers especially, TikTok, YouTube, you name it, they are pushing people into their agenda, because the one thing I continually hear when it comes to transgender is, it's my job to affirm you. Because if I don't believe you are the opposite sex of what you biologically are, if I don't confirm that you are now shifted into that frontier, that I'm the bad person and you're miserable.
Right.
If this is your choice and this is what makes you happy, why in the hell does it matter what I think?
Right.
It shouldn't.
It really shouldn't.
You made the choice, and you should be happy with your choice, whether I agree with it or not. I'm an Atlanta Falcons fan, and I live in Saints country. I don't demand of the Saints fans to affirm my decision to be a Falcons fan and to not give me a hard time when we play them. It doesn't work that way. They're going to hate me on Sundays. And I understand that. I accept that. On Mondays, we're fine. But I don't need them to affirm me saying, well, you're a good Falcons fan. You're not a bad one. The whole ideal of this is just nonsense.
Tyson announced just a couple of weeks before coming out as trans or non-binary or whatever that he and his wife had separated and were working on, quote-unquote, finalizing things. So if you're keeping score at home, Chris Tyson has destroyed his marriage, abandoned his child to a broken home, created huge problems for his friend and business partner, potentially costing him millions of subscribers and therefore millions of dollars. And he has done all of this just so that he can live out his fantasies in public. He had a beautiful wife, a child, a family, an incredible job that most people would kill for, which had made him wealthy and famous. And he pulled the pin and chucked a hand grenade into the middle of that happy and serene picture. And for what? Also that he can be his, quote, happiest self, he claims. And he achieves his happiest self by rejecting his actual self and all the responsibilities that his actual self is duty-bound to fulfill. Now, Tyson is, of course, just the latest in a long line of grown married men who decide to come out as trans or non-binary. This was Rachel Levine's story. This is really a story of some of the most prominent trans activists in the country. I think grown men who transition after they've already had kids and are married, this is a demographic that is vastly overrepresented among trans activists. Now, we know that, a great many of the people who identify as quote-unquote trans, you're talking a lot of this. This is because of rapid onset gender dysphoria and the social contagion factor. There's many adolescent girls who get caught up in this. But when it comes to the activists, it seems that a hugely disproportionate number of them are men, and especially men who, quote-unquote, transitioned when they were already adults.
That is something I have noticed growing up. So, I'm literally half a century old at this point. And again, it goes back to just want to be left alone, just want to be married, all the way up to just want to indoctrinate your children.
Yeah.
And that's where it becomes a real problem. A lot of things I'm tolerant of. I can accept a lot of things. When I'm in public and I see people that are gay or trans, they don't bother me and I don't bother them.
Right.
You
like,
be
big
you.
deal. It's your life.
Right.
If you want to live that way, that's on you.
I don't care. If you demand that I call you a pronoun, I'm going to tell you no, because I don't call anyone a pronoun. I've never called anyone a pronoun at any point in time in my life. Whenever I say he or she, the only reason I would use that is if I was introducing them to someone else and just go, okay, there's my wife. She is sitting over there. Other than that, we just use her name.
Yeah.
Why would you use anything else? I don't go up to somebody and say, oh, there's Bobby. Hey, them.
Yeah, seriously.
That's just ridiculous. I pity Mr. Beast for this, because the more I hear about this story, the sadder I am for just the dominating channel that he has created with just such entertaining content.
It just makes me wonder if he's like... I always say this, it just makes me wonder if he actually believes what he's saying, or if he just feels like he's in between a rock and a hard place and is like, doesn't know what to do.
I think it's the latter. I don't think he knew what to do, because to come out with the stupid term transphobe, that is the dumbest term ever. You disagree with me, so you're phobic, you fear me, you're afraid. No, not afraid. It's not that. But he kind of drew a line in the sand, and I just got into Mr. Beast, and I really hate hearing this.
Yeah.
Because this is something I wanted my son to watch, because I think Jimmy is a good person.
Yeah.
I think he enjoys doing for others. I mean, he helped kids see for the first time. He's bought shoes. He's done so many wonderful things. He's planting trees. He's doing everything he can to be a good person. Chris just put him into a really sticky position.
So Tyson is then a valuable example because he reveals an important truth about the trans phenomenon. Despite what we are so often told, the decision to transition is not personal and private. Okay, it's not some sort of harmless personal decision. It's not like you're choosing an ice cream flavor at Baskin-Robbins. Okay, that's a decision where you can rightly say to anybody who has an opinion about it, hey, this doesn't affect you, okay? What do you care? That's not this. You're doing something that will have a dramatic, life-altering, devastating effect on those who are closest to you. This is not a private journey that you walk alone. You are dragging others with you, whether they want to go or they don't, and almost always they don't. Indeed, all of Western society has been dragged into this. We are all impacted, and profoundly so, by individuals who refuse to accept reality and live as themselves.
It's narcissism.
Yep.
But those who are closest to the impact site will feel it the most. And many of them will end up buried under the rubble, starting first and foremost with the families. This is why a grown man like Chris Tyson, who makes this choice, really does not deserve our sympathy or our understanding. And I know saying that will probably get me in trouble yet again with many on the right who say, well, we got to be sympathetic and nice about this.
Oh, you don't.
Why?
Not to these people. Because he is engaging in the ultimate act of family-wrecking narcissism. It is the deepest betrayal of his marriage vows, of his responsibility as a husband and a father. And even worse, he's dismantling his family in a way that society approves of, which means that his wife can't object to the total demolition of her family and her marriage. She can't cry out in anger or sadness while her husband takes a wrecking ball to her life without being labeled a transphobe and a bigot.
Yeah. He just put her in a terrible position. Because she's already going to be labeled as a transphobe.
Because she's divorcing him.
Because they're getting divorced. And that's the mother of his child. A child who he said he did this for. I don't know this Chris guy, but just his decisions and the way he went about it sickened me.
Yeah.
I don't care for this Chris dude. I don't even know which one of Mr. Beast's friends is Chris. I kind of know Chandler, but he usually carries 5 or 6 people, and I never pay him a whole lot of attention. Usually the video's focused on Mr. Beast and the gold, and that's what I focus on. But he can do without him and be just fine.
Yeah.
Because as someone who has watched several of his videos, I couldn't tell you Chris from anybody else in his little group. But he has put his now ex-wife in a terrible position. And he's confusing the hell out of his child. And that's awful. That's just awful.
Which is probably why she's remained silent through all this. As far as I know, she hasn't said anything publicly. She's not even afforded the dignity of her grief. She is deprived of the right to be angry about this terrible thing that has been done to her. Okay, you're a grown adult man, you have a wife, and you transition. That is something you are doing to your wife and to yourself, but also to your wife. A man who has an affair, and leaves his wife for another woman, at least that guy has the decency to wreck his marriage in a way that allows his wife to hate him for it, and her anger will be validated by society. Men like Chris do the same kind of thing, yet they do it in a manner that calls for the wife's understanding. Very often we hear about men who transition with their wives' alleged support, and yet the details don't really add up. So, for example, a woman named Deborah tweeted this to me yesterday in response to one of my tweets. She said, quote, "My best friend Katie transitioned with the full support of her spouse, and in fact, they still live together even though they're officially divorcing. Not everyone has the same story. This is quite a beautiful story. I'm proud to have Katie as my friend."
But they're getting divorced.
Yes, his spouse fully supports it. She thinks it's great. I mean, really, she's so happy about it. She really is. Also, on a totally unrelated note, they're getting a divorce.
Right.
Because that's obviously what you do when your spouse
sense.
makes a decision that you absolutely support. You
100%
divorce them
agree
for
with
it.
it. Now my attorney's
Obviously, the claims about supportive wives are always fictional in these cases. I mean, always. Okay, in every case, when a married man decides to, quote unquote, transition, the wife does not support it. And I don't care what the wife says about it publicly, she doesn't support it. And I know that because these women married men. Okay?
Correct.
They didn't marry some kind of vague, ambiguous notion of a person. They didn't just say, "Oh, I'm marrying a person." It doesn't matter what they are, or what they look like, or anything. It's just a person. No, they married men. Men with definite characteristics, both physical and not. It is a form of abandonment, the worst form, in fact, to intentionally strip away and attempt to change everything about yourself that your wife thought she married. I mean, to deliberately attempt to become the opposite of what you are and what your wife married. It is, again, an extreme betrayal of your marriage vows. You are taking your wife's husband away from her. You're taking your child's father away from him. And the best you can do to justify that decision is to say that it makes you happy.
Narcissism.
I feel so bad for his ex-wife.
Right.
Like, I can't even wrap my head around what she must be feeling right now.
I have made so many sacrifices in my life for my son, for my ex-wife, for my current, for our daughter. Men make sacrifices. You can't be a narcissist and do everything you want to do 100% of the time. You're not always going to be happy. But at the end, you will find the happiness, no matter how many sacrifices you make. When you put your employer in the position that he is in, when you put your wife in the position that she is in, where she needs to now file for a divorce, all of this is straight up narcissism. It's all about you. And I have no respect for those people. None. So this Chris guy, if he wants to transition and pretend he's a woman, then I say this. I have no problem with people that want to transition into the opposite sex. But if that is your decision, commit. Get it cut off. Whack off the weenie. Get your breast implants. Whatever you got to do to become a woman, Do it. Do what Blair White did. I have no problem with Blair White. Blair was a man who became a woman, and by God, if you didn't tell me, I would never know.
I would have never known.
But he committed and went 100%, got all the surgery, everything else, which again tells you you can't just become a woman because you have to have medicine. You need to have hormones. You need to have testosterone, those must be done for you to begin this transition. And 2, you need to go ahead and remove the way that you reproduce. Just get rid of it. Once you've made this decision, you shouldn't reproduce anyway because you're a narcissist. You have decided you are more important than everyone else in your life. So go ahead and commit. Chris, chop off the weenie. Put it in a jar, set it on top of your bed. I don't care what you do with it. But if you want any respect, you don't run around pretending you're a woman while you still have a penis. Because you ain't transitioning into nothing other than what we used to refer to as a drag queen. And that's it. You're a pretend woman. And that's all there is to that.
So even by your own telling, even according to your own rationalization, you are choosing your happiness over the needs and desires and the happiness of your family.
Yes.
See, here's the thing. Transitioning is wrong always and every time. First, because it's impossible. You cannot transition from one sex to the other. But
That's
even if we
correct.
lived in the sort of science fiction universe where such a thing was possible, it would still be wrong to do it when you're married and you have a child. Like, if I believed in the reality of transitioning, I would still say that by the time you get married and conceive a child, the transition ship has sailed. It is your responsibility
Yes.
now, it's your obligation to suppress that part of you and live as the man that your wife and child need you to be. But it's not possible. And so the reality is so much worse. You're setting it all on fire. You're burning your life to the ground in pursuit of something you can never attain. You had something real and beautiful, and now you have nothing but a fantasy, a figment of your imagination. But at least you're happy, right? Except even your happiness
That's not
is fake.
happiness.
Your happiness is as
Correct.
real as your
Yeah.
womanhood. You aren't happy. Nobody is now. That was a trade-off,
That is so accurate.
and it's never worth it.
Well, Matt Walsh crushed it.
Yeah.
Matt Walsh crushed it. He's correct on everything he said. I can't argue with anything he said. And it's because he sticks to the truth. I haven't met very many transgender people at all. I've met quite a few that are, gay or bisexual or lesbians. And in reality, a lot of those people are happy.
Yeah.
They're happy. But all I see from this transgender is anger. Everything I see is anger. You're not affirming me. You can't confirm that I am. You want to argue with me that I'm not what I want to be. Well, I live in reality.
I think at this point, it's not so much the person's decision anymore. I think it's society's making the decision for these people.
It's a fact that
Yeah.
I've seen them come and go a million times, but unfortunately, due to social media, and a lot of these kids, especially after these bullshit lockdowns that our dumbass government, who throws flags all over our capitals, support, they put these kids in this position. They
And
couldn't.
they did it on purpose.
Well, they couldn't go to school, so they couldn't socialize there. So where do they socialize? They socialize online.
Yeah.
And then they find people that they think are cool, that they enjoy, they're funny, whatever the case may be. And then they start getting trained into becoming something that they're not. And then they're going to get older in their 20s and their 30s. And they're going to start making regrets on things that they now have no choice. They've got to just keep steaming forward because they've made decisions that have totally affected their future.
Yep.
And it's why I'm so against all of this nonsense of giving surgeries to children. If you're healthy, keep healthy.
Yeah.
Believe me, I've lived long enough to know when I wasn't healthy, I didn't want to go to the doctor. I wanted my immune system to take care of it. But, you know, at some point you kind of have to bite the bullet and go, okay, I need some help. But when you start bringing medication and all of this into your life, it absolutely adversely affects your future. Things like ADHD medication, which when I was a kid did not exist, and over time I've watched it, and it's like every kid is on this medication. You're creating zombies. And zombies are easier to control than free thinkers who aren't taking drugs. And pharmaceuticals are drugs. There's no pharmaceutical out there that you can convince me is not a drug, all the way down to aspirin. It is all a drug of one way or another. Quit taking all this stuff if you don't need it. If it's unnecessary, don't put it in your body.
And everything that's out there now, there is a natural remedy that's equivalent to it. We have learned this over the last few months.
But it's always been that way. And my growing up, we had that battle with marijuana.
Yeah.
You know, there were so many drugs people were on, whereas you had one like marijuana whose side effects are very minimal. But instead, you've got people that are on these Lortabs and Percocets and all these other drugs that they become addicted to. It ruins their lives. If they had just smoked weed, it would have been the painkiller they need. It would also make them a little happier. You know, that's one of the side effects of weed is uncontrollable laughter. And, you know, they say laughter is the best medicine. Well, what's the best medicine for laughter? There you go. Stop putting drugs and chemicals into your body. Just stop doing it. If you need help, if you're sick and you need medical attention, you go to the doctor, you talk to your doctor, you weigh how much of this you want to put into your body, because doctors are paid to prescribe you medicine. You don't always need that medicine, but they need that vacation to Hawaii. So be careful about what you become addicted to and what it is that you're putting in your body that you can't really get off of. I feel bad for Jimmy.
Yeah.
He should have never drawn a line in the sand by calling people transphobes. Again, a stupid word that is used to label everyone that you disagree with because they disagree with your choice.
Like, what happened to just conversations? You know, like...
You can't have those. We have drawn a line in the sand to where either you 100% agree with me,
or you're the enemy,
or you're the newest of the new labels. You're an alt-right, or a MAGA-right, or a Republican. I don't know the difference. I still to this day don't know the difference between a MAGA-right or what do they call them? They're MAGA extremist, far-right. There's so many labels. Liberal, libtard, which is just an insult. Alt-left, alt-right. I mean, you always get labeled
something.
Right. And it's why I've remained independent my entire life, because I've never fully agreed with either of the two colors. It's ironic their colors are blue and red because that's what gang colors are. And you become a part of a gang, and I didn't want any part of a gang. I wanted to be a free thinker. I want to make my own decisions. But unfortunately today, society, if I tell you one of the decisions I've made, you immediately label me as one or the other. Either I'm a libtard, or I'm a MAGA fascist, or
whatever.
And it is a sad position for our children to grow up in. And I do pity our children having to endure that. But I'm going to make sure they are very strong-willed.
Yep.
And that they don't have to bow. You don't have to bow down to the flavor of the month. You have the right to be you. If you can put on a wig or grow your hair and grow your nails and put on some high heels and act like a woman, then my children have the right to choose to do whatever the hell they want, because you have gone so extreme that anything my children decide to do will pale in comparison to your decision to support non-biology. Biology doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist. There's no arguing with it, because if you try to argue with somebody, all they do is insult you. You cannot have the discussion. But you tell us what you think. Get in the comments. Let us know where you stand on Jimmy, Mr. Beast, and the decision he's going to have to eventually make with Chris, whether he continues to feature him or if he just gives him some time off. And let us know, if you were Jimmy, what you would do, because he is in a ridiculously difficult position, all because of a narcissist who is now trying to put his decision off on his own child as the reason why he made this decision. It had nothing to do with that child. You will never convince me that child had even come into the discussion of him making this decision. Like, share,
subscribe,
do the thing.
Do the thing.
And until the next time, guys, as always, come at me, bro.